the reason kind of why I started this podcast, multiple reasons, is, you see so many podcasts outside of, just yapping or whatever,
Yeah.
but it's, you've got a guest and they're an expert in that, and all they do is talk about, how to be the best or whatever.
Yeah.
But you don't ever get to hear them talk about, like, okay, how did you get here? Like, what,
Yeah.
like, we see your success, but now what's what there's always a struggle. There's always pain and, all that stuff on the back end. And
For sure.
so, and it's, what's really cool is I did an episode a few episodes ago with one of my friends. He's a pastor here in Fort Worth, and he has a crazy story. Planted church, and then right after that, COVID happened, and then ended up getting divorced, and it's been a long enough. It's been long enough where he obviously he can talk about it. And dude, we've had multiple people. He's had multiple people like message him and be like, "Hey, thank you so much for talking about this.
Yeah.
I'm in the same situation, or I've, whatever. And I appreciate." And it's like even him, he's like, "Dude, thanks for having me on." I'm like, thanks for being willing to like share a very
Yeah.
vulnerable moment,
Me and my wife were talking about that the other day because, I'm a very, I mean, how, just social media marketing can be. It's like, hey, how do I provide value?
Yeah.
And we think of that as like a step 1, step 2, step 3, like, right. I got to give them a system. Great. That's absolutely true. But man, the connection piece, like the story piece,
Yeah.
is just as valuable. It truly is.
Yeah. It's and that's dude, that's one of the hardest things for me as a talker, and even with sales, that I've learned even more, is the less I talk and the more questions I ask, whether it's on a sales call or even getting to know a client, it always goes better. The more I
Yeah.
can find out, the more I know about that person, who they are, their story, the background, the context,
Yeah.
like it changes everything. And you don't even, it just makes, yeah, it's a very interesting. So, which is funny because, with AI now, I use read.ai. And so it'll tell me my words per minute. It'll tell me how much I talked. And,
Wow.
and so
Read.ai. I haven't heard of it. And I'm big in AI. I haven't heard that.
which one do you use? Fathom?
Yeah. Yep. I use Fathom.
So I'm sure some of them do it, but like with Read, it has like a coach. And so it'll tell me beats, words per minute. It'll tell me how much I talked. It'll tell me like sentiment. Like, so it'll tell me my
Really?
tone, my energy. It'll give me, different, I can set goals and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
You have me sold on read.ai.
I found it when AI started popping off. It was probably one of the first AI meeting takers that I just came across, and I just picked it because
Yeah.
it was like one of the only ones. And of course now it's so integrated, and it's connected to all my stuff, and take
Right.
my notes and client notes and all that stuff. But I I thank God for it, because it's helped.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
the fact that it kind of measures your speech, like notes is one thing. Like, I mean, that's like we'll call it like a very basic AI function, right? Like,
yeah.
listen to what I'm saying, give me the notes. But the other stuff, that's so valuable, like live,
Yeah.
like in this kind of setting. So you have me sold. Fathom just lost a customer.
I didn't even realize that. I just kind of assumed everybody else was doing something like that. So
I mean, maybe I'm not using Fathom up to its capability. So
I
maybe
mean,
Fathom's great, and I just haven't dove in yet.
honestly, that's how half the
Yeah.
software is. There's so many things that we're using. Okay, let's see. How do I want to, the first question that I want to ask? Hmm. I don't know. I'll start with this question.
Yeah.
With you personally, when it comes to money, finances, generosity, what for you personally? what has been your biggest revelation over the last, maybe your adult life? Like, I want to know. Yeah, I'd like to just kind of hear what's been your journey. Like, where was that aha moment, or maybe that's a conversation or experience. But for you, when it comes to finances and as a Christian, where was that moment, that breaking point for you?
Yeah, for sure. No, I've in I think money is obviously a topic that very is polarizing, right? Especially in the church.
Yeah,
So I think for me the biggest moment was kind of realizing where I got myself, right? So for me, it was understanding that, hey, I've been doing what I thought all of the right things, uh, but the results weren't there.
mm,
So it tells me something was broken in the process.
yeah,
And was it broken in some of my beliefs, in how I was handling it? And sometimes that was how I wasn't handling it, thinking that, hey, money is this topic that I don't want to focus too much on
yeah,
because I don't want to idolize it. Right. So I kind of like, it's going to take care of itself. I'm doing what I need to do. Right. I'm tithing. I'm making good money, and it will get figured out. Right. And I found myself in a load of debt. Right.
yeah,
Making a lot of poor decisions. And I'm a very introspective person, so I'm like, hey, what am I doing wrong? Because I thought I was doing everything right.
yeah,
I thought I'm providing for my family. I'm giving God's kingdom. And why am I still in a mess of chaos, right? And it doesn't feel, if you're not looking at it, it doesn't feel chaotic, right, at all. But when you glance and you're like, the credit card and the bank account, you don't want to look. It kind of hits that. I think we've all had that. We look and we're like, wait, I thought I had more. Or wait, the credit card is at that? I can't pay that off this month. So for me, it was just kind of being more introspective of saying, hey, are my behaviors lining up with scripture? And for there, I went in a deep dive of like, hey, is money this thing that like I do need to be looking at? And is money an area where I'm possibly not honoring God in by my means of management? Right.
yeah,
So yeah. So it's kind of roundabout answer is like, hey, I started looking at my own behaviors, my own actions, and to me, it's like, hey, is it following scripture? Is God, has God ever said don't pay attention to it?
yeah,
No. Is there a lot of scriptures around money that say, hey, it's dangerous? Like, sure, absolutely. Like money can be, and how our hearts are postured towards money can be dangerous, but it doesn't say don't look at it. Right. It doesn't say don't keep it in your visibility. So yeah. And ever since then, it stayed visible for me. Like I've made it a point. It's not my whole focus, but for me, it was like, hey, let's look at this as a way of like kind of changing my viewpoint. I'm like, it's not a bad thing to look at. It's a good thing to look at because that means I can best honor God in what I'm doing with it. Right. If I ignore it and I avoid it, no way I can honor God with it. No shot.
yeah. I mean, what do you, for you, within going from, which has been one of the things for me, is that avoidance or not paying attention to it,
Yeah.
to pushing back and leaning into it. Like, what do you feel, like, what is that tension? I think sometimes I still try, like, what is that tension, and why does it exist? Or like for you, like, what was that? Was there is it an emotion? Yeah. I'm just curious for, like, for you, what was that? Like, I've got to make this switch.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, I mean, no one wants to be in stress mode when it comes to finances, right? And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people do live in that. So for me, it was like understanding I'm living, like it's not just like a one-time event, but I'm living in a way that's constantly stressed out. So like while I wasn't paying attention to it because I didn't want to see it, it was still inadvertently running my life. right? So I think, it's hard to say like, it's hard to say, hey, what point did you hit where you're like, this isn't, I need to do something about this. I think that's going to be different for several different people. For me, I just got to a point. We were coming up to having our first kid. This was 4 or 5 years ago. And when you have your first kid, you kind of like, I don't know. I did like a whole like assessment of my life, I'm like, am I ready for this? Am I, so money happened to be in that purview, I started asking myself, is there some things I'm not taking responsibility for that I should, that is causing me to be constantly stressed out? Because I don't want to, live like this. And nor do I think God wants me to live like this. Right. Yeah. So by thinking I was doing the right thing by ignoring it for so many years, which created some bad habits, you kind of end up putting it on the pedestal because it ends up ruining your life emotionally then. And we're emotional creatures. So yeah, there's not one point. It was just, I think it's almost like fitness, right? It's like, if you're overweight, there's going to be a day where like, I'm done. I have no energy. It's the same thing. You'll hit a day where you're just like, I need to change how I behave. For me, that was shifting my beliefs, reading scripture and understanding that, hey, this isn't how we're supposed to, this is how I shouldn't be living every day. It's giving me a D grade version of myself when God wants me to be an A grade version of myself every day. And that's to show up for my family, people around me. So this was one of the, and I believe this for a lot of people, finances are one of those things that can easily just turn your life into pure chaos and stress mode.
Well, I love your response to kind of this statement that ignoring it that chaos and ignoring it ends up actually controlling you rather than you controlling it, even though it may take some time. Because for me, it's been a learning curve because I didn't, I have amazing parents, but they taught me what they knew, and it wasn't a lot, right? Being a Christian, I knew we got to give, we got to tithe, we got to be generous, but not how to manage and look at it and invest. And so I feel like I'm having to play catch up, and I felt that chaos and that stress, but then there's also, it feels like there's stress in even trying to learn about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's, it's this unknown thing for people. And I've been super blessed with really smart friends, like people that know money, like to levels that is incomprehensible, honestly. Like, so I think there's just like this void of like understanding money in general. And I wasn't taught, a lot of, money principles growing up. I saw, my parents were divorced. I saw my parents try to save as much as they could, but there was no glimpse underneath the hood, right? There was no like, hey, this is how we're managing it. It was just, you just saw decisions, and I think the biggest thing is the knowledge gap. Most people don't understand what money is, why it was even created, or even our economic landscape, right? In United States, in the world, right? And those seem like hard concepts to grasp, but once you know them, you kind of like, oh, I get the movement of money and understand it. And it doesn't seem like this scary thing, right? And I do want to comment on, I also, like I said, there's parts of the church, and I think I made a post about this, that, you have kind of two dichotomies of the church, right? You have asceticism, which is, hey, money is evil. Stay away from it. Like, you cannot get to heaven if you make any. You have money in your pocket, you better give it away. And then you have the prosperity gospel, which is like, I need money, right? And I think just and it's big in the Western culture that the asceticism side is a lot of like, it seems noble, right?
Yeah.
It seems very noble, like, hey, have no money, Mother Teresa, like this is, but it's just, that makes you ignore it, of like, makes you stay away. And I know I grew up Catholic, actually. So I started to go 9 to 9 when I was 19 years old, so I don't know. There's always this thing of like, look at the rich people, and all the church just wants is your money. And like, so it made it seem like money was like an inherently bad thing, and it just isn't, So I think just like the culture in general, you have low financial education. People aren't being taught about money. And then you do have these strong philosophies in the church across denominations that don't paint money in the right light, I think, biblically.
I think that dichotomy is very interesting because I feel like there's two parties, which for me, in my philosophy theology, is within the church. I feel like the enemy always tries to divide, and so it's like there's these two parties. When I don't I don't think I think it's not either or. I think that when it
Right.
comes to money, we're called to, this is something that you and I have talked about, and kind of why we hit it off is the stewardship part, because
Yes.
I grew up in a philosophy denomination that we give, and if we give, God's going to give us more, and
Yeah.
don't worry about, like, give everything you have and God will take, which at some level, yes, I believe that we are called to have extravagant generosity and be a generous people and a generous church. However, if we are good stewards first, we will most likely have more to be generous with.
Correct.
And I think that's where you and I connected, because there was that's the piece that, in my experience growing up in the church, that generosity was talked about a lot, and prosperity was talked about a lot, and giving was talked about a lot, and tithing was talked about a lot. But stewardship, money, managing money, investing, I mean, that was brand new until,
Yeah.
Dave Ramsey came out, and apparently he's the only Christian ever to, have money in the Christian world figured out. And I think that's, for me, that's where, and even personally, has been the shift. And so, like, even for you, when it comes to that side and what you went through, like, where did you start? Like, how did you start? I would like to know, like, what was the progress of, okay, I've got to figure this out, to,
Yeah.
okay, I've got this figured out.
Yeah. So, great question, because I'm an operational mind, right? So my background's actually in operations.
Okay.
So my background is to take chaos and turn it into streamlined order, right? Like that's what operations is like, hey, how do we structure and process things to make sure they're in the right places, right? So I attack problems from that light. So whenever I started doing that, kind of that self analysis in several areas, I look to what's the biggest, like what's creating the most stress and chaos within me, right? Stress is just chaos. And I mean, it's just chaos inside of you, right? How do I, like, what's the root of that, and while money was, I kept going back to it, like, hey, I feel like I don't have a grasp on my money. It wasn't money, right? It was my behaviors with money.
Mm.
That's important, because we talk about being a good steward, right? A good steward takes the right activities with whatever said thing is in his hands. That could be money. That could be, a plot of land, right? That could be with a household. That could be with your body. That could be in a lot of different areas. So for me, it was kind of breaking down the problem, which is what operations is. I'm going to break down the problem, look at the different components, find the true real problem, streamline, automate it. So, and then, so for me, it was like, okay, I need to look at this thing first, and I'm not looking at it, right? So I have some negligent behavior going on, right? God's entrusted me with some things, and I'm being negligent with it. And I use very specific language, especially with what I do. And there's a reason why what I do, my business is called Financial Order Academy, because I want to bring order to the chaos. And people some people won't see it as chaos, but that's what it is. And if we're not looking at it, we're being negligent of what God's placed in our hand, and understanding that isn't to be like condemning or shameful about it. But when I was looking at myself, when I was looking at myself, I had to tell myself I was being negligent. I had to go to that extreme of saying I'm being negligent with what God gave me. So then it was just bringing things into light, right?
Well, that's
What
good.
what am I spending per month? Where, you know, am I multiplying at any capacity? Right? I knew I was giving. Right? That was like that's 10% was accounted for. Promise you that.
Of course.
10
Of course.
is accounted for.
Yeah.
But there was still this 90% of like, where is this going? You know, so that can be done. But I'm not a big fan of budgeting, and people would be like, wait, you're a financial guy, you not budgeting? I think budgeting has a bad connotation, so you will never hear me use it. There are better ways to track how you spend money. That budgeting makes it seem like, hey, it's going to take me hours to get this done.
Oh, dude, budgeting is that word just, it makes me like, it just triggers so many. It's just like, oh gosh, I can't, I don't even want to sit down and think about that.
No, we don't. So I don't use budgeting. I will say back then I went through Financial Peace University about 7 times. Right. It's the typical, I mean, I would say most Christians have probably, your church uses FPU, Financial Peace University, and you have gone through it. It's good. We'll touch on that a little bit later, but so bringing things into light and allocating, understanding what's going wrong here. Why am I spending too much? Okay. Why am I spending too much? Is there some things I'm actually like buying for emotional needs? And what does the Bible say about using feelings and emotions? So it really was taking a lot of my money behaviors and bringing them into light and comparing them to Scripture. Simply, there is not you're not going to find like a hard coded like, hey, this is the step-by-step you need to do with your finances in the Bible. But there are things that behaviors and habits that you can line up and say, hey, am I handling this the right way? Just with anything. You could apply that to being a husband, being a father, right? To a fitness journey, right? Am I handling this the right way? So, and then it was a matter of once I was operating with visibility, right? And that some things are hard to cut out.
Yeah.
They are. If you're used to getting your, daily coffee every day, right? $7 a day.
Yeah. Breaking habits.
Yeah. You got to break the habits, and some things do need to be cut off cold turkey, right? There's absolutely some things, and there's some things like, hey, let's get progress. I love progress over perfection any day, right? Because you're not going to be perfect. Even when you have it, you're still going to make a mistake here and there, right? But it matters, are you in a better place to withstand that mistake, right? That's the place we want to get to. So, for me, it was once I felt comfortable of like where my second nature was operating in my constraints, right? My constraints is, the reality is some people have a $6,000 allotment. Some people have a $60,000 allotment, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't change what the instructions are, right? We have to operate in those bounds with the best that we can, according to what God's given us, right?
Yeah.
So I think placing focus off, obviously shame, bringing things visible, and then understanding that, hey, I'm not too far off here. Like I can start taking the right actions today and be a good steward today. Like the end result's going to come, but that's going to come by being a good steward, right? I'm not going to trim off $150,000 in debt in one day.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I mean, if you have a family member that leaves you something,
win the lottery.
Win the lottery, right?
Scratch.
You get, great, happy for you. That doesn't happen to too many people. But yeah, it's a matter of, can I, lay my head down and say at night and say, hey, was I a good steward today with everything God entrusted me with?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And, and you mentioned this, and so we'll kind of dive into on just our background is, obviously you grew up Catholic Christian. I grew up on the other side, which I grew up Pentecostal Christian. And so I think on both sides, in a lot of Christian spaces, there is very comfortable when it comes to teaching on generosity and tithing.
Yep.
And that's totally fine. But like in my experience has been almost silent again on the investing, the wealth building, the business side, financial management. Like why do you think that gap exists?
Uh, so a couple pieces, right? I I can speak non-denom, right? I would say that many people don't want to touch the prosperity gospel for one, right? And wealth building investment, I think there's a lot of pastors that are very much aware of that, right? Wealth building and investing can almost seem like you are prioritizing money in some way, which actually goes back to the asceticism side, if you think about it. Like I don't need to focus on that. That's kind of beneath me. There's more important things to focus about than money.
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's, those battling philosophies in the church, and there's not one governing body saying, hey, this is what money is, and which is one thing I actually appreciate by Dave Ramsey is like bringing things into light. And like Dave Ramsey is not afraid to say like, yeah, you can have a nice car, it's okay to have nice things. Secondly, I think pastors, I think it's tough for pastors too, because I don't think they are educated in finances. Not saying they should be, but so they're not going to touch on a topic that they don't fully understand, right? They're not going to go teach, and that's a responsible thing to do, actually. Like not teach on something that you don't fully understand, and we can talk about the history and like how we got to this place where like they aren't, and I think that'd be kind of interesting, of like what, like why aren't pastors equipped? Well, I think pastors can actually be paid better. So then maybe they can have more to invest with and understand more, and then they can teach other people, because congregants and, and people that go to church, they do look at their, pastor as a leader. Like this person shouldn't, like they almost assume knowledge,
No.
and I'm not saying that, pastor needs to know everything at all. But they do have that pressure though, of like, hey, if we're not being taught in church about it, is it important? I think that's where I would challenge people to like, hey, read, of course, read your Bible outside of going to Sunday, right?
Yes.
Understand if you want to learn about money, don't just leave it up to your pastor to teach you about money.
Yeah.
Go search, go see what the word says about money. See some of the stories that Jesus said, and Jesus talked about money a lot. Not because it needs to be a central focus of our lives, right? But there's actually some really good foundational principles he teaches on that can be applied in other areas that were meant to be applied in other areas. But there's also a reason why Jesus used money, right? In a lot of his parables. So that gap, it's I think it's a knowledge issue. It goes back to why don't people, it's just a pure knowledge issue.
Yeah.
And then I think they don't want to, it's, hey, asceticism, we think money might be beneath us. It's kind of, we shouldn't talk about it. Like let people figure it out for themselves, which has a cascading effect, because part of why I do what I do is, it should 10% be the cap for people giving?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
For sure.
I think, when we only talk about giving, you create this transactional tithe, right? Of I give 10, nothing bad, God will take care of me, nothing bad will happen to me, and I will be blessed. And I think it should be the reverse. Like I'm going to steward well. Part of stewarding well is giving faithfully, right? That's giving faithful. Like faithful means like, I know that if I do this, it's not a jackpot. It's not like, hey, if I put a coin in, I could win 150K back. I know I can give this faithfully and in full trust, because I've counted my costs. I know everything, and I know I can confidently give this faithfully. So yeah, I think if we focused and shifted the conversation to stewarding, I truly believe we would start seeing more people tithe too.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely sure. Yeah. So we've mentioned Dave's name, Dave Ramsey's name, a few times, and even for me, he is, of the little that I've been exposed to when it comes to stewarding and managing money, he's really been, as far as even the Christian world, the main voice. But I want to ask you, like, where, like, when it comes to Dave Ramsey, what do you obviously what do you love about it? But what do you in your approach? What do you not love, or what do you disagree with?
Yeah. So I love Dave. Dave, I mean, what he's done is and he's helped so many people, right?
So many people.
And I think if you are in absolute trouble with your finances, like his 7 baby steps I don't agree with all the baby steps towards like 6 and 7. I don't. So we can touch on that. But, I just, what I appreciate about Dave is his candor with money in general, right? Bringing this emphasis that like you should be doing better with money.
Yeah.
So I think the heart is what I agree with, like more than anything. Like and he's done a phenomenal job. And I think some of the mechanics I would disagree with, and debt, for example, he would say no debt when he tells this real estate story of like how he owned a bunch of real estate and they called it and he was screwed. I think debt for a consumer is terrible,
Yeah.
right? I think a debt for an owner isn't bad, right? So I know I teach a lot about having a consumer mentality versus an owner mentality when it comes to operating our personal finances. So consumer mentality is what the system wants you to be, right?
Yeah.
Buy, buy, buy the stuff that you don't need.
Yeah.
Rent.
Yeah.
That's consumer. Owner is how do I have assets? So there is good debt, and this is where I would disagree with Dave. I his story, I know he has a personal reason for his story. That's great. Teaching that as universal, I think there's a lot of wealthy people that would disagree with using debt. So he would go back to scripture and say, hey, debt, makes you a slave. I would say the kind of debt makes you a slave.
Yeah.
Right. Am I truly a slave on something that I have a lot of equity in?
Yeah.
Right. Like if I can sell it and recoup it and be good, am I a slave? I am a slave to that credit card bill that I bought McDonald's on every single day because I can't sell that food back and make my money back or make more. So yeah, that's probably my biggest thing with Dave. But Dave, if that's so we start talking about getting into advanced things, like there shouldn't be like, if you're in a lot of debt and don't know the mechanics of money and don't really understand your household finances, debt's bad for you.
Yeah.
Like you need to work on that.
But like, would you say there's different levels?
For sure.
Like, right, you talk about,
for sure.
and I feel like that's what I'm realizing, which is good and bad, but in the sense of not bad, but it's as I'm learning more, even the more I'm realizing that I don't know, and that there's different levels of this. And so you even kind of alluded to that when, you've got like, hey, if you're like, you got to start somewhere and you're just trying to get out of debt. Okay, great. Dave is great for that. But I think even for you, there's even levels in what you've shared.
Yeah.
And so maybe kind of talk about like, what are those levels, and maybe, because there might be some guys or some people, guys, girls, people that are listening going, oh, well, I'm good. I'm not in debt. I'm got a little bit of savings.
Yeah.
But they're still missing the bigger picture when it comes to not just being out of debt, but building wealth, investing, saving. Kind of what do those levels look like for you?
For sure. So the question that always gets people is like, are you fully confident you're being like 100%, like, are you 100% honoring God in your finances? Or is like, are you confident of that? I have found one person say yes. That person's already a very wealthy person. And I'm not saying wealth is what we need to chase, right? We do not need to chase wealth. We need to chase process. We need to chase the stewardship part. So, and that's in levels and stages, right? So like, if you can't create margin in your finances, you can't multiply. You have nothing to multiply, right? So that's where I would say that Dave is really good at, right? Bringing people from negative to zero. And some people need that, but some people I think a lot of people they hit zero, right? They kind of get out of chaos. They might still have some things they need to clean up, there's always stuff we can clean up. And I'm always going to challenge that on people. I don't care if you make $500,000 in a year. I will always ask the question, like, show me what you spend money on.
Yeah.
Does it justify, I can make $500,000 a year and still go buy the energy drink every day. Do I need to be doing that?
Yeah.
Right. So I would say that stuff that could be reallocated towards, I think, the things that really, really, really matter. Right. And that's giving and multiplication, right? Giving and next generation. That's generational thinking, right? It's always impact to somebody else. So I will always challenge that. So that's one thing I would leave people with, like, hey, you might be doing really good. And I would still challenge you, hey, still look at what you're spending money on, right? And is there anything that, getting a little deep here, that gluttony has consumed you on, right? Yeah. Self-control. If you're unable to say no to the energy drink every day, you don't have self-control in that area. So it's like operating. I'm not saying don't get the energy drink, right? I hope that's what people are hearing me on it. I'm not saying don't. I'm saying if you can't say no to it, there's a problem there, right? So you can make a lot of money and not be able to say no to things, and you have a problem. So that's always the first thing. And then the second thing is get a team of people. I think a team is so important. Someone that if you don't want to get in alternative investing, like, you should at a bare minimum be like in the market. Like, you should be doing some things there, Yeah. And you need to understand, this is another thing I'll agree with Dave, is that you need to understand what you're investing in. Some people have different risk profiles. I know a business owner that does not like, things that he can't hold in his hand. So he has no stocks, but he's a millionaire. He owns buildings and cars.
Yeah.
So the levels there, like, let's get you chaos to order. Let's bring order, and order is making sure order means that you're the governor, so like, not even your feelings are telling you what to buy, let's get to that point, and then let's go order to capacity, and this is where I touch on with families a lot is capacity means I can run with it for a little while and make minimal amount of mistakes. I have good efficiency. And also, I'm teaching a cadence to my family. I'm pulling my wife in, we're doing it as a couple. And then if I have children that are old enough to understand concept of money, they're seeing our decisions and they're seeing things. So I'd say those things are very, very important before even doing anything else with your money, right? Yeah. If you get to a place where you're able to have order and run it with capacity, now we can start talking about, like, hey, let's cover some of the basics, like, get a good CFP, understand, so they can help you from several facets, not just from investing, but, you might have an opportunity for, trust involvement, tax planning if you're a business owner, right? There's these things that really do matter. So having someone on your team like a CFP is really, really important. And I'm saying the right people, because there's a lot of financial advisors out there that just want to sell you a product.
Yeah.
So, and then we can start talking about alternative investments. So, there's kind of like, what I call baseline, and that's order to capacity. It's sad that baseline is actually the worst part of that now in society, is like, baseline is who Dave helps. And it's like, no, baseline should be, and I believe that Christians should be being the pace car of society.
Yeah.
In all facets, right?
Absolutely.
So baseline, we should be the ones being the most diligent and shrewd with our money. So that means we are operating at order, and we're running at capacity, and then we're doing legacy. Legacy is that more investment side, maybe higher level planning. Is there any alternative methods that we can get into? What are some of the other vehicles we can explore? And I know for a fact there that I'm making an impact in my children's children, which is biblical, and I'm giving to the kingdom of God, right?
That's good. What would you say to the guy, man or woman, the person who's maybe they're fully into their adult life, right? They're mid-30s, 40s, and if they were honest with themselves, they're like, "I have no clue what I'm doing. Where do I start? What do I do?" What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, for one, if you're at that place, you're like, I have to make a change, right? Realize there's resources out there that can help you learn about money, right? You need to learn about money. There's several books, and this is where I start going into the belief side. In what I do, we teach belief side. I believe systems without belief are just designed to fail, right? So start unpacking some of your own beliefs. What do you believe about money? What are some of the things from your childhood that you were taught about money? What has your church taught you about money? What are some of the connotations you have towards someone that has money? What are your connotations towards someone that doesn't have any money? Right? These are going to unveil your beliefs about where you're at with money. You have to root your beliefs in scripture, right? So there's, like I said, a lot of books. What we do helps with that. Um, and then it's systems, right? Once we can correct beliefs, we can start adopting the right systems. Yeah. And that goes back into like, hey, someone might be asking like, hey, I don't have time. Most of these people are busy. They got families, they got jobs. I don't have 15 hours a month to budget. Okay, well, there's systems out there that can be deployed in your life that take 2 hours a month, but don't run from it. Don't be avoidant from it. If it's something like, hey, I know I need to make a change, look, get visibility. And that's like I said, there's apps now, a lot of ways for you to get visibility. And like I said, in my journey, like I teach this because it was me, like I was this guy, and I went from close to $300,000 in debt 4 or 5 years ago. And it was business debt, some bad debt, credit card debt, just very negligent.
Yeah.
And in less than 4 years, we should have it paid off in about 6 months, all while building, we had some good opportunities, all while building. And that's another thing me and Dave would disagree with is pour all your money on debt, all of it.
Yeah.
There's a time for that, but I've also built a net worth up in that time too, right? Passive income coming from investments, So there's ways and you're not too far gone. It's 4 or 5 years seems like a long time, but it isn't. And your whole world can change.
I think that's tough too, because, hearing you say that number, I'm like, because we're working out of like a situation where we have some debt, and to us, it feels like a whole lot.
Yeah.
Now that number compared to what you just said is, I'm like, that's nothing.
Yeah.
I think that's also a hard piece, is that the pressure and shame and the, like looking at that number going, are we ever going to get out of this?
Yeah. Shame is a real piece. Shame is, finances can be dude, I drove a nice car. I drove a really nice car. I had sold that car for a car I just paid off, and so this is where I'm saying really you have to shift kind of your paradigm and how you look at it, right? Yeah, it was a lot. It was daunting. And even to this, you're like, how am I ever going to get out of it? It's like anything else though. If you have the belief behind it and understand that I need to do this because it's what's honoring my father, that's and you place weight and you place focus on it, you can, and God will come alongside you, and I'm not saying we're perfect.
Yeah. And I think that's where I was. I had to get to a place where the stewardship piece where, okay, I'm going to do the best with what I have now.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start making steps, and then I'm going to trust and believe that God will do his part, whatever that may be.
Absolutely.
And has it happened as fast as I want? No. I keep waiting for that big check to come, and I can be like, yay, we're good.
We're free. Yeah.
But I think what it got to a point where it drove me to almost a desperation. And really, it was obviously for us, for my wife and I, it created some tension. And I
Yeah.
was getting tired of all of it, like the tension and the weight and the shame. And I'm like, okay, I've got to figure something out. And so we actually found it's a Christian company. It's a nonprofit that they do like debt counseling, debt consolidation,
Yeah.
and they were like, and I'd never heard any. I didn't even know it existed. I know honestly because I watch YouTube, and a couple of the YouTube guys they'll they'll plug debt consolidation thing, and I just had this thought of, I wonder if there's any Christian companies or whatever that do something like this. And there was actually quite a few. And so I kind of searched around, vetted a few and called, and I ended up finding one. And the person that I talked to, had been in hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt, used this nonprofit. They helped her. And I was like, okay. And that was kind of that one little moment led me to a search, led me to the company.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was kind of the snowball that was like, okay, there's some hope there. Like there is a really small light at the end of the tunnel. And so, for anybody that's in similar spaces like us, please know that you can do it. You can get out. There are people that will help you and can help you. And I think one of the things that you said, as we're talking about the emotion and the feeling of shame, is that with any kind of sin, in dealing with shame, is you've got to bring it into the light. And I think sometimes the easiest thing not easiest, the thing that we have to do is we've just got to tell somebody, hey, there's a problem. I need help. I don't know what to do. Or, just admitting like, I'm not that great with money, and finding those people and getting help, because there's amazing people like you, and God's put those people in my life. And what's funny is, because I started talking about money more, is that I found out there's people in my life that are very skilled with money. And I'm like, and they're like, hey, what questions do you have? And I'm like, oh, I got free help. Like I got, so I think it's interesting that shame piece tries to silence us, and you'd be surprised who God already maybe has put in your life that can help. I'm gonna ask you this as we've got a few more minutes, but what would you say to pastors and churches when it comes to the topic of money, how to approach it? Or what would you maybe even like, hey, pastors, I'm going to challenge you. This is what you need to think about, or even this is what you need to do. Not just to benefit the church and their budget, but to also to benefit the people that they serve.
Yeah. I mean, I'll touch on what we talked about earlier. Is most people get, and I don't know why my camera keeps cutting out here. Most people get, or most churches will do one series a year on money. Right. And it's their offering.
It's November.
Yeah.
October,
right.
November, leading up to the end of the year. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And people know that. They feel that, right? Right. People know, so, well, Chandler, you're a marketer. So you understand this. I'll go to Gary Vaynerchuk, right? The jab, 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 right hook. Everyone's heard. What? I would challenge even the premise of that, of like, we're asking, where is the value being delivered? Right. So I would say my biggest challenge is do a stewardship series on money. Yeah. Don't mention giving. Mention solely the other 90%.
Yeah.
Don't talk about the 10% at all. Right. Don't even mention it. Because we have to rewire the beliefs of the people, right, to what Scripture says about it. So that's my biggest thing. It's like, hey, let's back up. Let's see why I think it's less than 30% of people actually tithe. I think there's a stat. I think it's like 26%.
Dude, no way. It's got to be way less than that.
You think so?
Oh, it's we would have to confirm, but
Yeah.
it's, from the stats that are out there, it is
Yeah.
very, very small percentage of
Yeah.
people within the
You
church
know,
actually.
and I think there's a lot of very, very capable people in the church that can tithe.
Oh, for sure.
That I hate saying it aren't aren't doing it because of how they're handling their own finances. So yeah, stewardship series. Don't mention the 10%, and I would also make sure that it's touched on that. Hey, if you can't give 10 and you can only give 1% right now, do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Because I think there's like this
Start
floor and
somewhere.
ceiling of like 10%.
Yeah.
It has to be 10% or nothing. It's like, no, no. If you are in a spot right now where you can only give one, but then let's focus on the other percent and make sure how are you handling the other percentage, And then when we find margin, let's let's make sure they understand that it's okay to give to your Roth to build your retirement.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have 45-year-olds that don't have retirements. We shouldn't have I would probably go on a limb. There's probably a lot of pastors that are 50 that don't have retirement.
So many.
And so that looks like faith. I'm believing God's going to provide. That's not faith. Faith is I'm going to do what's the needful and believe that God's going to come intervene in that. So yeah, my challenge would be please do a stewardship series. Talk about money. The reason people get cringy about money is because they know that you're only asking for money, and that's not a shame thing. That's not like, hey, you shouldn't ask. The ask should be there, but we just got to reprogram people to understand, hey, there's more to the picture than just giving.
Yeah. Well, if you're always asking, then that's what people are going to associate anytime money comes up. But if you're helping them,
Yeah.
you're adding value, giving them the tools, the resources, the ideas, the scriptures on
Yeah.
stewarding and managing and all that stuff. Then you almost don't have to ask them to give
Right.
because you've helped them you've helped them become better stewards and managers of what
Yeah.
God's already given them. And so it's like, yeah, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Wouldn't they give? And then I think even for me with the whole, okay, I've got debt, but I've got to tithe. And, do I tithe and give, but I got this debt. And there was a tension for a long time for me of, well, I absolutely have to give, which is true, but my heart behind it was it was a fear-based decision
Yeah.
rather than, you know what? I know God loves me
Yep.
and I know he knows my heart and I know he wants me to get out of debt. And so for this season, I may be giving less unless he speaks to me. I may be giving less,
Yep.
but I'm making the right decisions now so that later I can then give more and not just, for me, but for other people and for my family and for my kids and
Yeah.
build something that again, not just building my wealth, but also building the ability to be more generous in the future.
Yeah.
And
And
I
be
think a lot
guilt.
of people get stuck on, well, I can't not give. And it's like, listen, God knows your heart. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, I
Yes.
promise you, if you if you need to take time to work on managing what God's
Correct.
giving you in later down the road so that you can be able to give even more, I
Yeah.
there's grace for that.
Yeah. If you're giving with like a tight grip, like, oh, or if you're giving like, man, that like, I feel guilty if I didn't do that, you know,
Yeah.
that's guilt. And, that's transactional tithing. And, yeah, we have to get around that. So it's like, if you're taking the steps, like, hey, I just like, if I have to pause so I can become like, I'm going to take the right steps, I would say
Yep.
you're being faithful with your money, right?
Yep.
Don't be there forever though. Like take the right steps, create the margin so you can give faithfully with a
Yep.
cheerful heart. A cheerful heart is like saying, not being like, oh man, if I didn't give that, kind of like strings attached, like we need that's not I don't think when when our time's done here, guys, I'm like, hey, I saw that for that 3-month period, you went from giving $500 a month to $100 a month. He's going to say, hey, you pull back, but you're doing it
because
you want to be better.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great point.
That's good. All right, we're gonna go into some rapid fire questions, and I'm just gonna hit you with them. Try to answer them as short as possible. If you got to elaborate, that's totally fine. But I want to, I kind of want to hit some of these for you. What do you feel like is the biggest lie most Christians believe about money?
Overall, that it's evil, that we shouldn't pay attention to it. They spiritualize it. It's practical. Be practical with it. And I think they think it's bad. It's unworthy of my focus. Let's put it that way. That's a lie.
Credit cards, should Christians have them or not?
If you have an owner mentality, sure. If you have a consumer mentality, no. Yeah. And
I would say if you're a good steward, you can probably steward a credit card. If you're not, don't touch it.
It's a self-control thing for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Best financial book that isn't the Bible.
Ooh, I'm gonna go with kind of what helped me, and I believe it was called God, Money, and Possessions. Hold on one second. I have it right here because it's in my. I mean, if we're talking from like a spiritual standpoint, I mean, there's so many. That's a tough. Money, Possessions, and Eternity, or Managing God's Money. One of those two is by Randy Alcorn.
Oh, Randy he's
the OG, man. He's great. I don't agree 100% on everything, but that right there, those two books really help you put a lot of things in perspective of where I think we're amiss right now.
That's great. Yeah, Randy Alcorn I remember stumbling upon him and be like, why have I never heard of you?
Yeah.
What's if there was one thing that you could tell that, or what's one thing that everyone should know about money right now?
One thing. This is tough, Chandler. One thing. I'm going to stay on the stewardship route. I truly believe if you can settle into outside of results of what's going on, if I can settle into handling my money as if God hand delivered it to me, and he said, this is mine. If you can adopt that paradigm, I think you'll be good. I think you'll be fine.
When it comes to the topic of money, whether it's, people you work with, clients, whatever, what's the one thing that's like a pet peeve when it comes to, when, I don't know if it's people's problems, but maybe like what's your one financial pet peeve?
Excuses. We all have them, we all give them for something. I'm sure my trainer would tell me the same thing, right? If hey, why'd you have the ice cream last night? I had a stressful day. I think it's the same thing with money, so excuses is the biggest thing. And excuses are just your emotional part controlling you, right? If we can get out of that, and don't be embarrassed if you need we all need people sometimes to get us out of that place, right? We all need someone to call us out and say, hey, stop with the excuses. So excuses, biggest thing for sure.
That's good. And last question, who is someone living or past who has influenced you the most? And it could be, it doesn't have to be, but it can be about, money, faith, leadership, anything. Like who in your life has been, that if like you think everyone should know, who would that person be?
On money, I'll keep it on money. He's also a Christian too, but I have a good friend. His name is Dave Hutchinson, DK Hutchinson, and he's taught me a lot about just we'll call it the underworld of money, right? So he's taught me a ton on understanding money from like a conceptual basis, and even how money operates in the economy and on the world scale, right? A lot of it just generally blows my mind and just helps stretch my thinking. So that's a tough question because there's so many. I've been blessed by so many people. Just I call them everyday people, but that's what they are. Like this is, you touched on it, Chandler. Like there's people around you that you don't even know that can completely bless your life in so many areas: leadership, money. So network with people, talk to people, be
Yeah.
friendly with people, hop in a conversation that you may not know nothing about, ask questions. There's more people around you than you think that are willing to help you if you apply yourself. And I think that's one thing for like a lot of higher level people, right? That people that you want to extract knowledge from is they want to give it. They want to provide value to you. So, man, I'm thinking like all the people like leadership wise, like, gosh, that's a great question. But
That's great. Well, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on and having this conversation. And you've been a blessing to my life, and just being able to share, and just again for me being in a similar spot and dealing with, just again having these conversations and being able to be okay with, hey, I did struggle with this and I'm dealing with this and I'm getting over this. It even for where I'm at is it's just encouraging.
Yeah.
And so I love what you're doing. And if you're someone, you want to make sure I'll drop Andrew's stuff, all his links and Instagram and his website, so you can get more information and connect with him, ask him any questions. You've been super, we just connected on Instagram. We had some connections and had some great conversations. And so I appreciate you being open and having some great conversations, and the value that you've added to me and what you're doing with Financial Order Academy. And why don't you I want to give you just a couple seconds, just a clarity on, who specifically like you work with. Cause obviously everybody, you could really help anyone. And I want to encourage, if you have questions, they can come to you and ask, and you can point in the right direction. But specifically with who are you looking to work with? Kind of what's your lane when it comes to, the Financial Order Academy?
for sure. Yeah. Well, for one, Chandler, thanks for having me on. I think we've talked several times, and it's been a big blessing in my life. And, just connecting, having someone that you can talk to about in depth. You don't find people too often that you can talk about in depth and go to those places. So I really appreciate that with you. And but yeah, so for Financial Order Academy, we focus mainly on 6-figure earners, right? So we that income range, we'll call it like 120K to about 400K a year, right? And these aren't people that we work with that are completely like in my story, like, hey, I'm 300K in debt and just in disarray, right? I really focus on people that are pretty close, that have obviously they're somewhat disciplined because they're making really good money, right? But we still need to bring some order there, right? And create margin. Like, you're operating at 60% capacity. My goal is to bring you to 99.9 for God, right? I want your money operating in its fullest capacity and what God intended it to be. So I'll leave it at that. People that know, hey, I want to go to the next level with my money. I'm done kind of living mediocrely, and I'm not saying I'm going to promise you're going to have a Porsche next month, right? But what I will say is that we're going to get you in the right steps to make sure you're honoring God fully with your money.
That's awesome. Yeah. And again, we'll drop all your links and some details below. And just, if you are listening to this, you need help, get help, ask questions, just connect. He's not going to sell you anything right away. But I promise you, he can point you in the right directions. He's already given me multiple resources and books that he didn't even mention. So, I want to encourage people to go and check out what you're doing. Again, thank you so much for being on. Make sure to like and subscribe. We got more episodes coming up, more episodes live. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching and listening to Outstand Podcast.